Good afternoon, everybody. This is Butch Oxendine, Executive Director of ASGA, and thanks for joining us on our weekly webinar series that we're making available at no charge to members and non-members. And so every Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll be leading these webinars for the foreseeable future. And today we have Ernest Robinson, one of our esteemed speakers, will be leading this session in just a moment. But you can always look at I'm going to show you the screen for where to find the webinars, and you can always look at our social networks to know what's coming up. Ernest is doing the one today in just a few moments, but also next week at 3 p.m., Dave Kelly will be leading a workshop titled Student Government in a Virtual World. That is coming up next Thursday, and then Dr. Michael Anthony the following Thursday will lead one at 3 p.m. as well. So those are coming up, and I just want to remind you that throughout the time that we have today together, that you are welcome to ask questions. You're welcome to throw out ideas anytime that you would like, and that can be done in the chat box. So please do that anytime that you're wanting to do this. Again, today's webinar is titled The ABCs of Student Government Associations, ABCs of SGA. I just love that title. It's always one that got me very interested right from the beginning when I got to meet Ernest. And Ernest leads these workshops in person at a number of our events. Before we start, I just want to share some ideas we are working on at ASGA. We know many of you may not be able to travel this fall in person, so we are developing ways for you to get the training you normally would at one of our events, but in a virtual sense. And for example, if you were to come to our Chicago conference in person, you would see 4 concurrent speakers at any given time, and meaning 4 workshops that you could choose from. That's what we're going to do in the virtual sense. We are going to have our speakers present to you at the same time. You can choose which room you want to be in, and our vision is that you would attend these with some of your members if you're there in person at your campus, using all the protocols, of course, but the idea that you can still interact with our speakers, interact with each other, and get the training you would at a normal ASGA conference. So that's coming up. I just wanted to share that. We are experimenting with a new camera today that kind of is a video mimicking a TV studio. It does this automatically, goes between shots, as you can see. So let me know what you think about that at the end. But I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ernest Robinson. Ernest has been leading workshops for several years now at the ASGA conferences, select ones, and he did this workshop last year in our big National Student Government Summit in DC. So I'm going to turn it over to Ernest, and thank you for being here, everybody. Appreciate it. We look forward to serving you today, and do please keep in mind, I've already got a question before I do that, Ernest, is do the dates for the conferences remain the same? That is our intent, is to offer the conferences at the same time. It may say Chicago. It's not going to be in Chicago probably, and that's what's seeming to happen right now. But we're looking at the same dates for Chicago, Dallas, Los Angeles, DC, and even our advisors conference, which is coming up in September, and also the new officers training, which was supposed to be in Orlando, but just can't see that really happening at this time. So there we go. And Ernest, thank you so much for doing this. If you will take it, it's all yours.
Absolutely, absolutely. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for our esteemed Executive Director, Butch Oxendine, to leading the ASGA conferences. So I can see that we have quite a few people in here. If you can quickly, shout out where you're from. I see Nicole from Covington, Louisiana. I see who got Kirsten Taylor from Texas South Bend, Indiana. If you can put in what is that you do, Walla Walla, Washington. Okay, Chicago, Illinois is in here. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, so we only have about an hour. Texas Tech, Director of Student, okay, all right, SGA, okay, so and that's why I want to see some students. SGA presidents are in here. If we have any students that are in here, so I'll give a little brief about myself so we can kind of get to know one another a little bit more. My name is Ernest Robinson. I am a United States Marine veteran. Currently, right now, I'm a congressional relations officer, so I do a lot of work on Capitol Hill. What got me involved into the American Student Government Association as a speaker, one, Butch is very intentional about the speakers that he brings on. Everyone that will come before you, whether it's on a webinar or whether it's going to be in person, which we hope to soon get to, has either served in student government or has advised student government, and for a considerable amount of time. He wanted to make sure, he's very intentional about making sure that the information that you're receiving is coming from practitioners, those who have served in those spaces, to being able to either give sound advice and or guidance when it comes down to the intricacies and nuances of student government. And so, me having served in different spaces, when I was in college, I'm a graduate of Virginia Union University, which is a historically Black college university in Richmond, Virginia. I served as senator at large. I served on judicial affairs. I was also a student athletic advisory committee, as well as a student rep for the quality enhancement when it came down to the accreditation of my university. And so I got involved into many, many different things. And one thing that I learned over time, and actually speaking with other students, even speaking with advisors, is that there are some basic things that we just really don't know about student government, right? And so as I began having these different conversations, I was finding some themes that was going on, and I was like, well, why not just create kind of the ABCs? It's kind of like a basic foundation of things that you may not have thought about, or made some things you wish you knew before getting in. Some of you have been advisors for a while. Some of you have been involved in SGA as a while, and sometimes it's just a on-the-job training. And so I kind of thought if this would be something that would be interesting, and also because we're also entering a very, very different environment, regardless of how many degrees each of us may have, or those who are in the process of attaining their degree. No matter how many years you've been in SGA, none of us have experienced something like this. And so it is important and imperative that I think that we have a brief little conversation about some of the things that are going to help us as we move forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And please, as you all have any questions, please put them into the chat box. Myself and Butch will do our best to field those questions. I do not personally mind for you to come off mute if you happen to have a question. There's a hand raise. There should be a hand raise button that should signal when there is a question, if you have one in between time. And hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end to have a little bit of discussion. Just need a thumbs up real quick if everyone can see my screen. Butch, if you can come off mute and let me know you can see my screen.
Got it.
Got it. Awesome. Okay, cool. So we're going to run through this. Hold on 1 second. Let me put this back on here. There we go. All right. So the ABCs of SGA. So we definitely, we're only here for an hour, but take a break if you need to. I encourage cell phone usage. So if there is something that you see, reason being, one, follow me at EJ Robinson 2014. I will do my best and follow everyone back. This way you can also stay in contact with some of the things that I may be up to and or what I'm doing while working with the American Student Government Association. Please use ASGA Online. You can also follow ASGA Online through through Instagram. Is the online Instagram page, so that way you can stay connected and also stay up to date with some of the information that may be going out. But please use these hashtags. Anything that you may hear that may work, share with your students, peers, and colleagues. Okay. So one of the first things that people may not think about is appointing their board. Okay. In some institutions, you may have a board appointment. Some of them may be elected members. What's important about appointing your board is making sure that you have good people around you. One of the things about appointments is that especially if they're not elected, is that one, they're not elected. So therefore the body does not have the opportunity to being able to vet this particular person or hear what their views are. And so sometimes it may be, does the person have more loyalty to you as the person who appointed them, or loyalty to the business and to the student body? And so therefore it may be an opportunity to be able to evaluate how boards are actually formed. I know that we have a number of institutions, from technical institutions to community colleges to your traditional four-year institutions, that have varying student government participation. But this is something that you may want to, again, take a look at, especially for, I saw a couple of SGA presidents, SGA vice presidents. So as you're evaluating the individuals that surround you, make sure that you take that into consideration about who is appointed or how that process is being done, okay? And that can be controlled by the bylaws, okay? You have a constitution, and then you also have bylaws. And one of the things that I ask students is the difference between the two. Because oftentimes we run on the fact that we want to change things, okay? But you have to understand which document needs to be changed. Some can have a change, others need to have an amendment. Then you need to have other stipulations that control whether or not you can or can't do that. And so in the bylaws, we'll actually give the explicit instructions as into how things are to be enacted, as that is in support of your Constitution. So making sure that you do have an understanding of that. And many people do not review their bylaws. And that's one of the things that ASGA is in a position of being able to help do, is to review your bylaws, as well as and give guidance and advice as how those bylaws can be implemented. And it's something, some of those things have to be in correlation with either the institution's bylaws or institution's contract. Things cannot overlap, but there are some legal things that kind of help protect the advisors, as well as protect the students, as well as protect the interests of the institution. And so it's important that you actually have those in place, okay? The other thing that people didn't really kind of follow was a chain of command. Because if you're in a position where you're kind of looking at the dynamics of going from a regular student to now a student leader, what does that really mean? How does the flow of information travel up and down? And that's one of the things that we identified in the military, was that chain of command is the passing of information from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top. If those who are at the top do not have any inclination as to what's going on at the bottom, how can they be enacted to change? So, and those at the bottom need to understand when changes are being made. A lot of SGA presidents have a seat and or a vote during the Board of Trustees meetings. And so it's important that SGA president comes back and reports down to the body, so that way the body is well informed about what is going on. And it's also important that you know that you don't go to the vice president of student affairs before you may go to the dean of students, or may go to your advisor first, or figure out what that chain of command is. And if it's something, again, that you have not made explicit, that may be something you may want to review when going back. And especially in this time, because everyone may be accessible either through email or phone or through a Zoom communication, you don't want the information to kind of get out of whack and overstep bounds. So make sure that you have an understanding of what a chain of command is. All right, so here's one thing that I think is going to be important, especially when we get back, is going to be debate. How do we have healthy exchanges of ideas? And that's really what it boils down to, is that you have an understanding of your particular point of view, but you should have a very healthy understanding of another person's point of view in order for you to be able to union or that you empower your students. And what this is illustrated by this particular this picture here is that we have questions, and everyone has answers. But what we want to be able to do, as I alluded to in the previous slide, as far as debate, is come up with the best idea. What are going to be some of the things that's going to be best fitting for us in this particular moment? And there's going to be best practices all over the place, but sometimes we have to figure out what's going to be conducive for our environment in the space that we're in. Again, you're talking about institutions that may be in rural areas, others that are in urban areas, others that have, the whole thing with international students and this and that. And so what are the questions? There's no dumb question. And there's no wrong answer. So we just need to figure out the best ways of being able to bring the best ideas out of that particular situation. Okay. All right. Fiscal responsibility. These are one of the things, again, that a lot of people don't necessarily think about when you are running for office as an SGA representative. You don't necessarily think about what fiscal responsibility is. And honestly, fiscal responsibility is your responsibility over the resources that your body controls. There are some institutions that have a budget of $5,000, and there's other institutions that have a budget of $20 million. And each of them, despite the amounts, have the same levels of responsibility, or another sense of fiduciary responsibility that is owed, that the official, the SGA student, has to their institution. And what that simply means is that if something is allocated for, let's say you're going to purchase a Zoom meeting space or time, then that means it needs to be spent on whatever it said it's going to be spent on. If you were throwing a party and you needed money for security, it needed to be for security and not for food. If you come to an SGA conference, which we hope to see you all very soon and shortly, part of your fiduciary responsibility was to make sure that you're attending each one of those particular meetings, that you're not doing something else. And that shows your fiscal responsibility, so that way everyone knows that you are taking care of the resources that everyone is putting into the pot. Are there any questions going on right now? I can't see the chat from here, but is everybody doing well? I can't see no faces either, so I can't see but a couple.
So far, so good. I'll let you know.
All right, not a problem. All right. So the gavel, I'm gonna brush past this one. Typically, inside of a meeting, a lot of people don't know what some of the students may not know what a gavel is or how it's used, but it's used in many different cases in order to being able to control a meeting. Okay, control the flow of a meeting, to open and close. It also gives direction as to when and how we're going to move, when to stand, when to sit, and also to be able to give order into a meeting, to disrupt or to stop or mitigate disruption during a meeting. Okay. Now, one of the things that I would, with honor, and I would go into the chat and would like to ask what, or if somebody wants to get off and ask a question to you all, what do you think honor, what does honor mean to you? And if anybody's in the chat, or if anybody wants to come off of mute to answer that question.
Telling the truth and being transparent.
Telling the truth and being transparent. Anything else? From anybody? Okay, hearing none. So
we got another one. Doing what you said you would when you said you would do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things that I always think about is doing things in an honorable way, and always giving honor to your name, You are an ambassador to your institution. And so when I always think about it, I always think about, again, from being a Marine. Whenever I step in front of, when everyone sees this particular uniform, there's a level of expectation to have an honorable service, to that the person has lived an honorable life. And in respective to what we may wear, whether it's a suit, whether it's a dress, whether it's pants, whether it's a cardigan that has our school name on it, we should always be honorable and have honorable actions. And so therefore, we never cause question into our character or cause question into whom that we may represent. One of the things I am a speaker, on my own merits and right. But however, even in my own personal livings, I still represent so many different organizations. I represent the American Student Government Association. I represent the military. I represent, HBCU graduates. I represent Black men in many different senses and ways. And so therefore, everything that we do should be in striving to be honorable. And so I always kind of stress this to students, because sometimes students kind of feel that they have to, it's a switch on and switch off type situation. And when you say that you're going to be in a leadership position, it's not one where you can just kind of switch it off. It's one of those things that's 24/7. That's one of the things that I learned as being a Marine. It's 24/7. I can take my uniform off. I can put my uniform on. I'm still a Marine. And even though I haven't served actively in the last almost 10 years, I am still a Marine. And so therefore, I am always honorable in the things that I do, how I treat people, how I receive people, how I carry myself, and everything else. And so I think it's one of the things I think is important. In addition to doing what you say when you say that you're going to do it, be honorable in your intentions. Now, intestinal fortitude. Who knows what intestinal fortitude? What does that mean? What does that mean? In the chat, or you can come straight off of mute. Anybody know what intestinal fortitude is? Okay.
Well, a couple have said guts, having courage, listening to it.
Absolutely. No, spot on. It is absolutely guts. And it's one of those things that in a leadership role, again, whether you're a student, whether you're an advisor, being able to have the intestinal fortitude of being able to say no or being able to say yes. Because you've been challenged in so many different ways, whether it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether it comes down to returning back to campus, whether it comes down to, setting rules and parameters. We have to have the intestinal fortitude to do the right things. Again, going back to being honorable. Doing the things that you said that you're going to do. So the things that you said you're going to fight for those things. Things you said you're going to stand against those things. And being in a leadership position, it is not easy. It is one of those things that you're constantly going to be challenged from different angles. But I always say that some things are just a test, as there's, you can break down the word intestinal, a test that's going to be a part of your testimony for the next thing that's going to prepare you. So just like right now, we're all being tested. And whether or not we have the intestinal fortitude of being able to stand up and sit there and say, no, we still need this training. We still need to make sure our students have the best experience they possibly can have while they're in this institution, giving them every opportunity to being able to learn and grow while we're in this space and in this time. And that I'm going to do as a leader, whether as advisor or whether as a student, and I'm going to do everything in my power to being able to make that happen, okay? So the next thing is jurisprudence. Most people don't necessarily use this particular word, but this is really where it boils down to, is just your ethics. Saying, again, going back to being honorable, having the same rules for everybody. So if the grade point average is a 2.5, then there should be no one that's on staff that has a 2.49999. If it's a zero tolerance, if the SGA president winds up being intoxicated while on campus, then they should be removed from office if your bylaws say so and dictate that. There should not be any rules that are different based upon anyone's class, station, religious beliefs, creed, or otherwise. And far too often, we have seen some of those things kind of play out. And it kind of compromises the integrity when it comes down to student governance. And it compromises the integrity on the top as well as on the bottom. Administrators no longer have the belief in the students can being able to govern themselves. The student body doesn't have belief that, that those who may be elected are able to do things ethically. And we see bad or poor ethics in many different avenues, whether it's in government, whether it's in business, whether it's in the church, or whatever have you. And so it's important that we make sure that we model the expected behaviors in everything that we do, because it sets the tone for those who come behind us, okay? All right, so this one I kind of thought about before, and I'll be remiss to not acknowledge the fact that we, today is the funeral of Congressman Lewis. And one of the things that I kind of thought about, as far as one of the things that is imperative when it comes down to leadership, and especially during this particular time in this climate, is to be kind, okay? But kind means to be knowledgeable. So the K means to be knowledgeable. So I want you to have a knowing heart. Know what your job is. Okay, make sure that you know what you're supposed to do, but not just know what you're supposed to do. Know what the roles that are. If you happen to be a SGA president, know what your subordinates do or what they're supposed to do. If you happen to be a senator at large, know what your SGA president can and cannot do. It is important that you know what's going on, but not just know what's going on. The I means to be informed. Okay, so there's one thing to know an answer to something, but to be informed, because things change all the time. And it's one thing to know an answer, but it's one thing to be able to explain why that answer is. So one of the things that we've all mastered, especially if you're on this call, is that we understand why 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, we can use it, whether it be integers, whether it be physical numbers, whatever it can be. We can explain the reason why 1 + 1 = 2. So when someone asks what is the role of an SGA president, you should understand what that role is, but then also understand what the changes are. When policies change on campus, not just knowing what the policy is, but knowing why that policy is in place and if you want to change it, be informed on how to change it. Understand what the process is. The N means for being noble. Do the right things at the right times for the right reasons. And there's so many things that are going on, whether it's COVID, whether it's civic or social issues that are going on. And some people may be doing the right thing, but it's at the wrong time. Some people may be doing the right thing, but they're doing it for the wrong reasons. And one of the things about being noble is you cannot pick and choose which one you're going to do, because again, it compromises the integrity. And the D stands for to be determined. And one of the things that I think that's going to be challenging to all of us, whether as speakers, as advisors, as students, and student leaders, is that we have to be determined. Determined, one, to get through the semester, because as students, you still have to graduate, you still have to perform in class, you still have to lead. As advisors, you're still navigating your own personal as well as professional lives, to being able to bring all these things together to carry the burdens of your students, and to do the will of your institution. And so therefore, there's going to be challenges in that. And so therefore, and the one thing about being kind is that you have to be knowledgeable, informed, noble, and determined. And one does not come before the other. None is greater than the other. And you must have all four in order to be able to be kind in your roles. Okay. The next one is what leadership is. So I quickly, I want somebody to kind of throw out some words, throw them in the chat. Tell me what what leadership is to you. What when you hear the word leadership, what does that mean? In one word. Okay. Can't see the chat. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can see the chat. Oh, there we go. All right, inspiration, service, inspiring others, setting the foundation, collaboration, absolutely. Absolutely. Guidance. Hold on a second here. I gotta go back to my, here we go. Ooh. So all of those things, compassion, formative, character, hope, perseverance, being imaginative, having courage, effective, being patient, all of those things make up leadership. Everything that you all stated, and for those who didn't say anything, for the things that you were thinking about, for the things you feel, for the things that you live each and every day, that's what leadership is. And just like being kind, you can't necessarily be slacking in one or any of these particular areas. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we all need to be perfect. This is one. Being a leader is that being flexible is to be understanding that we may be imperfect in some areas, and we're going to work on those. And we're going to strive to be better, and so that way we can again set the foundation for those who come behind us. That's the whole purpose of setting a foundation, and so that someone else is able to stand on what you've built. Again, I can revert back to Congressman Lewis, who exuded, exemplified leadership that we can all stand on. And I think that it's so important that in our roles on a day-to-day basis that we set those particular foundations for our students to being able to stand on those particular things. And in this particular time, we're going to have to be imaginative. We're going to have to be innovative in how we do things. Okay. This one is one of those things that is kind of understood and may not so much, because not everyone buys into majority rules. There are some institutions that I have found through my travels and talks with students that use a consensus method that does not use, so they do not move forward until everyone is in agreement. And that may, in some instances, may not be the most effective way to do things, but it works for that particular institution. And so sometimes we may look at majority rules, but does the majority represent everyone's, mindset? So, and that can be debatable. But again, evaluate how you come up with the way that decisions are going to be made. So is it going to be consensus basis? Is it going to be on majority rules? If it's on majority rules, then we have to allow for that to govern the decisions and what's going to be done. All right. So network. Now, this is one of the things I think is also important, not only for our students, and so especially when we have our national conference. It's one of the most spectacular things that I think that students can participate in, having anywhere between 600 to 800 students, maybe 100 to 200 staff and faculty come from all over the world who come and migrate to Washington, D.C. But it's an awesome time to being able to connect and network, because one of the things that in life, you get to certain areas not just based on what you know, but who you know and who knows you. And so what I would like for everyone to be able to do real quickly, if you could, if you do remember my my Instagram, is to connect with me through Instagram. Connect with ASGA online. Take a photo of your. Well, if you don't want to take a photo of yourself, take a photo of this screen. So that way, if you don't feel photogenic, and shoot it on the network real quick. And or if you're on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn at Ernest J. Robinson. And I'm looking for anybody to come through right now. So EJ Robinson, I'll put it in there. Let me put it in the chat. Where is it at? No. Hold on. Here we go. Well, Butcher, you can put it in there at EJ Robinson 2014. But just use this time to connect with one another, because what oftentimes happens is that a lot of advisors, a lot of students kind of believe that they are the only ones who are experiencing whatever they're going through, right? And so, and what we come to find out, whether you're at a 4-year institution, whether you're at a 2-year institution, community colleges, large institution, whether you have a small budget, whether you have a large budget, we all share some of the similar issues, and therefore we're able to learn best practices. But don't feel like you're alone. ASGA does a great job in, again, giving guidance in certain areas where yeah, okay, I'm seeing some of the answers up there. Yeah, giving guidance on how to kind of maneuver through some of the nuances that your institutions are experiencing. But being a part of a network, a larger network, kind of helps with that opportunity of being able to see those things, okay? All right, so, hold on, did somebody come through on? Okay, all right, I see, okay. So I got Jess, Raider Life, Naima, sorry. Let's see, Sam, Nicole, Treese, okay. The Student Life, WWCC Student Life. All right. This is how we keep those networks going. Okay. So let me go ahead and move on. All right, so an oversight committee. So really this is an opportunity, one, to be able to develop an audit. So just audit your minutes, audit your meetings, making sure that things were done the way that they're supposed to be. People said it and did the functions that they were supposed to do. Oftentimes, and this is one of the things for student advisors, and even for SGA presidents, to make sure that you don't have any vulnerabilities or any liabilities that may be out there, where you have committees, meetings that are taking place that you may not know about, and things are happening, decisions are being made that may leave you vulnerable. And there are some and again, contacting Butch, being if you're a member of ASGA, you'll get the advice and some of the best practices of being able to kind of protect yourself in this particular sense. I use the oversight committee that kind of oversees in government reform as an example of whatever you may want to call it when it comes down to your student government or your student governing body. But make sure that you do have one that's in place that can help and protect you. Okay. Parliamentary procedure, again, just how things are ran and run. It's an important thing to kind of being able to know, but we have some very skilled individuals who, Chris does that one, right, Butch? Yeah, and how you actually do it, and even alternatives to it, because parliamentary procedures may not necessarily work for your institution, but there are alternative ways of being able to, govern and run your meeting. Okay. All right. A quorum. All right. So a quorum is one of those things that I think kind of speaks to the bylaws again. And one of those things that kind of gets overlooked, and one of those things that can be caught in an oversight committee or an audit of your minutes, of the roll call, and how decisions are being made. Reason why, and what a quorum is for those who may not know, is the smallest number of people who must be in attendance of a meeting in order for before certain decisions can be made. Okay. And again, your bylaws will determine which number needs to be present for which decisions need to be made. So if you are making monetary decisions, you may need 3/4 of a presence. If you're or take that back, if you're making amendments to a bylaws or any adjustments to a constitution, you may need 3/4 representation. You may need 2/3 representation when it comes down to monetary, but your individual bylaws will dictate and determine that. Reason being you want to have that is because the dues from students, not the dues, but the dues do kind of make up most of the budget for the student government, in addition to whatever monies may be allocated by the institution itself. And so therefore, if decisions are being made where it involves money, we want to make sure that the most representation is being represented during the decision making, and that we're representing the thoughts or the needs of the institution. If that number is not being met, oftentimes what can happen is there is some liability that may be there. Somebody may not be informed. An advisor may need to be present, but may not have a vote, but needs to be present. You may not necessarily count all of the executives council who may be there. You may need to have certain number of senators or certain number of student representation before any of those decisions are made. So make sure that you, one, go back, review your bylaws, and understanding if you don't have a quorum set a quorum. If you need help in being able to, one, adjust your bylaws, or two, set a quorum, contact Bush and the ASGA, and we'll definitely help you with doing that. But again, this is something that will actually help provide integrity to the decisions that the students are making, and promote the integrity of those decisions that are being made amongst the institution as well as amongst the student body. Butch, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I do. I just was dealing with a school just the other day that what they're dealing with is exactly what you just described. Their constitution requires that they have 40, 50, I think it was 50 members who are elected. Now, these elected members, they were having trouble filling those positions. So they only have about 20, 25 that are in positions. But the quorum rules require that it be based on that 50. So they just couldn't meet quorum almost ever. So this is exactly what you're saying.
And even in addition to that, I mean, once we're able to sit down and kind of review that, we may be able to offer the fact that you don't need 50 elected officials. You might just need to reduce that number. If there are too many chiefs and no Indians, then it kind of causes more problems than it is. I mean, that's another topic for another day as far as making sure everyone feels, important, has a title, but, being a student is what's most important. That's, those who, the least of you, or the greatest of you rather, the greatest of you will serve. And so it matters not what your title is. You've just elected to say that you're going to work harder for the students. So you're in a service position, not in a position of entitlement or anything like that. So anyways, we're going to press on. So hopefully we have some time for any particular questions. Robert's Rule of Order, again, kind of the same thing when it comes down to parliamentary procedures, but there is an actual book. And so there's a history behind how Robert's Rule actually became, where there was an Army colonel who was invited to a meeting, and it was all in disarray. There's a lot of chaos and confusion that was going on. And so he created this particular guide, or he wrote up a manual to being able to determine how meetings are going to be run, so that way they can run smoothly and be efficient. And so if it's one of those things that you may need to kind of either brush up on it, or if you have no familiarity with it, go to your local library, Google, it works phenomenal, and download it, and then you should be able to kind of get some semblance of that. And again, as I said before, we do a real good job of kind of help coming in and helping you run it. And so advisors, so that you know how those meetings are supposed to be run as well. Because oftentimes, again, you may have just matriculated through your career, and this was a career opportunity for you, and you've never been in a student government organization before, or you may not have led student government before. It may be in a while since you've been in student government, so things have changed. And so this is a great way to kind of brush up on some of those skills, and then also being able to interact with us on what those best practices are, so that way you understand how your student government is actually running. So when you're sitting back, not saying anything, but you understand what's happening, what's going on. All right. Standing committee. So what a standing committee is a standing committee is comprised of all of the individuals who are elected who are the chairs of certain committees, okay? You have other committees that are ad hoc that may be ran by non-elected officials of your student government. And this also is determined by the number of students that you have, or by the number of elected students, or if you, whether or not, as Butch alluded to, whether or not can you even fill all of the seats necessary to even hold the committee positions that are there. But the purpose for this is that this is one of those committees that are everlasting. It only changes based upon the elected student that may hold that particular seat, but they chair that have their level of responsibility, and they incorporate the student body or other elected officials that are not a part of the executive or the cabinet to participate. So that way, again, it brings about levels of representation. Okay. One second here. All right, so your term. One of the things about being an undergraduate is that the whole time is terminal. The purpose is to get in and graduate. But one of the things that makes it most challenging when it comes down to student governments is that you barely have roughly about 6 months to do anything and get anything accomplished. You have them from mid-August until maybe early December, and then you have from mid-January until roughly about April. So whatever it is that you wanted to be able to do, it's important that you get it done, which is the reason why webinars that we're offering right now are so important, actually being able to take advantage of. The trainings that we do intermittently throughout the year, which does a great job of hosting about 11 of them, and to make training continuous. The one thing we used to say in football is hit them early and often. And that's one of the things we want to make sure that we do when it comes down to leadership training is early and often. Because one, you have to groom the next that are coming in, but make sure that the ones who are currently serving are formidable as they are moving through the different nuances and challenges of your institution. Terms are very short, and so it's one of those things, and being able to understand that and kind of make it worthwhile. Uniformity. Uniforms are your identity, and I will rephrase that into uniforms are how you are identified. Okay, uniforms are not your entire makeup of who you are as a person, but they are how you are identified, and it goes back to the honor. Like when you see a service member in uniform, you have a certain level of expectation out of their behaviors, the words that come out of their mouth, the way that they receive individuals, their character, and the way that they conduct themselves. And so for students, it is important that you understand that, especially when you are representing your institution, and you're wearing that uniform, whether it's a cardigan, whether it's a pin, that like my pin's, ASGA up here, that you are constantly doing the very best to have honorable actions in that particular time. Okay. All right. Vision. So it's important that you lay out what your vision is going to be, especially student SGA presidents, SGA leaders, and even for advisors. Advisors maybe not so much, depending on how intricate you are to the overall governance of the SGA. But I think it's important that you help the SGA president and SGA leaders set their vision, and you help guide them in being able to do that, so that way they're setting a clear vision. So that way they understand what it is that they're going to do, how they're going to move forward. Again, and right now, because there are so many questions when it comes down to the current situations with COVID, when it comes down to some of the current situations with some of the social and civic issues that are happening, it kind of blurs what that vision is going to look like when we come back. As professionals or as students, it is still sometimes unclear as into, are we doing the whole semester? Are we doing half a semester? Are we doing a hybrid version? Are we doing, and even all the way down to K through 12? I mean, I have an 11-year-old daughter right now. We don't really know whether or not she's going to go school online, or she's going to, or is she going 2 to 3 days out of the week to go to school. And what does that mean for our lives? So I think it's important that we kind of gather together, sit around, and being able to discuss what those things are going to look like, how it's going to look for us as we move forward. All right, the who, what, when, where, and why. Okay, this is how, as especially for our student leaders, this is how you should answer everything before you come to your advisor. Reason being, this is the questions that they have to answer when they go to their supervisors to approve anything. So, what is going to happen? Okay, or I mean, well, who's going to be there? What's going to happen? When is it going to happen? Where is it going to happen? And why? Part of that who's paying for it? What is it going to serve? You know, again, the when, the where, and the why. So, and all of those things you need to answer. And these are so one of the things I always say is that the skills that we learn, that you learn through ASGA trainings, these are transferable skills. So even when you get ready to move into a new position, or you go and you want a new job, you want to go into your master's program, you should answer these questions in your own life as you matriculate. You know what I'm saying? So who, what, when, where, and why? You know, so like have your ultimate goal set in mind. Like if you want to be, you know, a CEO of a company, you know, well, who's going to help me get there? You know, what am I going to learn when I get there? When am I going to obtain that? Where am I going to learn it at? And why am I going to do it? So that way you can always have those questions and sleep with a sound mind when you make the decisions that you need to make. All right. Now, I'm coming to the end of the alphabet, and it's kind of hard to kind of come up with you know, words to being able to describe things, but I came up with X-ray, and what X-ray actually means is the transparency cycle, okay? Your policies, your technologies, your reporting, and your engagement. These are things that are imperative when it comes down to student government, right? You want to make sure that one, that you have an understanding of your policy. You want to use your technologies to get that policy out. You know, you want to, and that's whether that's going to be YouTube, whether that's Facebook Live, whether it's LinkedIn. Now there's interaction with, you know, with LinkedIn and different platforms. You want to make sure that you have transparency in your levels of reporting, reporting to your supervisors as well as reporting to your students. As student leaders, again, reporting to your advisor as well as reporting to your student advisor. For SGA presidents that sit on the board of trustees, reporting to your board of trustees, reporting to the vice president of student affairs, and reporting to your student body. And then the engagement. You're not in these positions. The fact that we can't be physically in proximity of one another does not mean that we do not engage with one another. And so we want to make sure that we hold on tight to that and figure out, again, back to the leadership portion, being flexible, being innovative, and being creative on how we're going to move about and take on our everyday businesses, okay? And one of the other things that's going to be important when it comes down to student government is going to be you. When it says for you to be the change that you want to see, it all starts with you. There's nothing else that can be kind of taken away from that. Okay. And one of the things I think who is the author? I'm trying to recall the name, but okay, it is Gano. So what he says is that I have come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element. Okay, it is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. I possess tremendous power to make life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. But in all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis is escalated or de-escalated and a person is humanized or dehumanized. If we treat people as they are, we make them worse. If we treat people as they ought to be, we make them capable of becoming who they should be. And I think that that's important, again, especially as advisors, to being able to take that burden on, to being able to be that decisive element, to being able to be an instrument of inspiration, especially in a time and a climate like this. Everyone needs it. And especially, and one thing about the network is being able to inspire and refuel everyone here. Because as leaders, we get drained. We're constantly pouring out ourselves into other people. And oftentimes we don't necessarily get that back. But your network, those that you have around you, will be able to help and refuel you, okay? And the last is going to, there we go. So it is all about who are you. And the last one's going to be zero tolerance. And really all that really means is that if you say that it's going to be, then that's what it's going to be. If there, again, there's zero tolerance for whether it's discrimination, whether it's bigotry, whether it's low performance, if it's tardiness, if it's drinking and intoxication, if it's violence, if whatever it is that is that is toxic to your student government, to your institution, making sure that you have zero tolerance for it. And again, it adds to the level of credibility, it adds to the level of integrity when it comes down to the governance of those students, and as well as your abilities as advisors to kind of being able to have control over that. So one of the things is that follow me. Again, I think I have several requests that I need to get to when it comes down to social media. So I am on my Instagram right here, and I appreciate everyone who has already. I've sent back my follows to everyone on here. So that concludes my time. We are here to answer any questions that you may have. I look forward to maybe working with any of your institutions further, whether it be staff, whether it's students, and the ASGA is always here to being able to help with some of those things that I talked about earlier. Again, bylaws, transition of power, your terms, your constitution, and any other nuances, Robert's Rule of Order, especially when it comes down to parliamentary procedures. Again, Butch does a very good job. He has an awesome, awesome team. We are talking about probably roughly 60, about 80 years of experience, I think, between all of us. 80 years of experience between all of us who have.
Oh, it's more than that, Ernest.
Yeah, I was being light because there's several who has been working with Butch for about 20 years.
I've been doing this 37 years, so
right, yeah,
that's
okay,
right
so,
there.
So yeah, so Butch has been doing this as long as I've been alive. There's an absorbent amount of experience that's here at a moment's notice. Just again, follow us on ASGA online, different websites. Reach out to Butch, whether it's through email or however you were brought to this particular platform. I thank you so very much. I'm honored. Thanks so very much.
Hey, thanks, Ernest, so much, and it's been a pleasure to have this workshop. Boy, that's a challenge to get through the alphabet, isn't it? So thank you. We've recorded this. We've recorded this webinar today, so we'll be posting that shortly. So some of your students and staff who weren't able to attend will be able to view that. Just want to remind you that we do have webinar next week. At the same time, here it is, just a reminder, Student Government in a Virtual World. That will be August 6th at 3 p.m. So be looking for that. And the following week is going to be Dr. Michael Anthony at 3 p.m. But we'll be listing this again at the site. You can always see that by going right to the webinar section at the website, which I'm showing you now. And that'll let you plan for that. And they're all free at this point. We don't have a plan at this point to charge for this. Will be a service just provided to our members. So any final comments before we conclude? You're welcome to contact Ernest and any of us if you have questions. So just let me know. And thank you again for attending. As I mentioned, we'll get this webinar recorded and uploaded shortly. So thanks again for attending. We'll see you next week.